Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We want to share the latest updates on Tropical Storm Debby as the storm begins to impact North Carolina. In our state, we're all too familiar with rain and flooding that comes from slow-moving storms. So preparation now means saving lives later. We expect this storm to continue its slow, gradual approach, bringing multiple days of heavy rainfall and the potential for widespread and even severe flash flooding. In response, I've activated more than 350 soldiers and airmen from the North Carolina National Guard and deployed swift water rescue teams to be on the ready. Last night, we received a federal disaster declaration from President Biden that'll help direct federal assistance to North Carolina. A slow-moving tropical storm can sometimes be even more deadly than a quick-moving hurricane. That means even without the constant high winds, we must be on high alert. This storm can bring dangerous conditions to much of our state. In a number of areas, our forecasters predict tornadoes, heavy rains, flash floods, and possible storm surge that can quickly inundate low-lying areas. There have already been fatalities reported across Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, where response efforts are ongoing, and our prayers are with our southern neighbors. Tropical storm warnings and watches have been issued for much of eastern North Carolina, and some voluntary evacuations are underway. However, all North Carolinians across our state need to be prepared for a deluge. More rain than most of us see in a month or even several months. The southeastern parts of our state could see as much as 15 inches, and the central parts could see up to 10 inches in some areas. The rain, combined with already saturated soil and winds, can lead to downed trees and power lines. Make sure you and your family are ready with supplies in case you lose power. Our emergency management team here and those in counties across the state are deploying resources strategically. On Monday, I declared a state of emergency to help move supplies, equipment, and crops before the storm arrives. I've talked with FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell, and their team is with us here at the Emergency Operations Center. North Carolinians should take this storm seriously and make sure you're ready, especially if you live in low-lying areas. And that means taking care of your pets too. Be sure to secure your home and belongings and have a way to stay informed. And remember, never drive through flooded roads or around barricades. It only takes 6 inches of fast-moving flood water to knock over an adult and just 12 inches to carry away most cars. Now is not the time to see if your car floats, because it doesn't. It's not safe to drive or walk through floodwaters. Our Department of Transportation and our first responders will tell you that we've lost too many lives after these storms because of people trying to drive through or walk through water. We expect the impacts to continue for several days. So please listen to local officials and follow evacuation orders if they are issued. If you're told to evacuate, get out of the danger zone. Make a plan now to stay with friends or family or even at a shelter. They will be opening, and you can visit your county government website or call 211 for instructions on sheltering options. As always, I'm so grateful for our emergency responders around our state who are always ready to help. And I'm confident that while we hope for the best, we are prepared for the worst. Today I'm joined here by Emergency Management Director Will Ray, our Transportation Secretary Joey Hopkins, the Adjutant General of the North Carolina National Guard, Major General Todd Hunt, our Commander of the North Carolina State Highway Patrol, Colonel Freddie Johnson, Emergency Management Assistant Director for Planning Katie Webster, and FEMA Federal Coordinating Officer Rod McAllister. Our American Sign Language interpreters are Lee Williams and Nicole Fox. And behind the scenes, our Spanish language interpreters are Jackie Mativier and Nancy Villanueva. At this time, I'll now ask Director Ray for his update.
Good morning, and thank you, Governor Cooper. North Carolina is once again faced with a storm that will impact communities with heavy rainfall, flooding, gusty winds, and isolated tornadoes. Since last Friday, our state emergency response team partners, local, state, and federal agencies, our nonprofit and volunteer agencies, and the private sector have been focused on the potential tropical development and the impacts from Tropical Storm Debby. Since Monday, the State Emergency Operations Center and portions of the State Emergency Response Team have been activated at an enhanced watch to support capability needs of our local and state partners. Today, we have further elevated our operational posture by fully activating the State Emergency Response Team to facilitate effective response to the needs of our local jurisdictions and state partners across North Carolina. It is important for all North Carolinians to be aware of the conditions, to have a dependable way to receive emergency notifications and alerts, and to have a plan of action if you can no longer stay in your home. With the forecasted rainfall amounts for up to 15 inches across the eastern North Carolina and up to 10 inches in central North Carolina, we are anticipating major impacts from flooding across portions of the state. Rainfall in these amounts can flood homes and businesses, erode and damage roadways, and may create situations in which local officials may need to order evacuations to ensure public safety. Areas that normally do not flood may be covered in water, and I urge you to follow the guidance of your local public safety agencies. The State Emergency Response Team has activated 17 swiftwater rescue teams to be staged across our central and eastern regions of our state to assist local response needs. Components of North Carolina's 7 state urban search and rescue task forces and hazardous materials regional response teams stand ready to also respond. We are continuing to evaluate the potential flooding threat and identify additional search and rescue or swiftwater rescue capability that could be needed, either native to North Carolina or through partnership with other states and the federal government. The North Carolina National Guard has deployed over 350 soldiers with high clearance vehicles and other equipment to support both the movement of commodities and personnel across the state and are prepared to assist the counties and areas that experience flooding. The State Emergency Response Team has supported multiple commodity distribution missions across 9 eastern counties currently, which include water pumps, tarps, meals, water generators, and sandbags. Along with our partners at the North Carolina Office of EMS, we are working to stage resources to support the healthcare infrastructure across the state, whether through state medical support shelters, medical personnel, or for pre-hospital EMS response needs. As the governor said last night, the White House and FEMA approved a pre-landfall disaster declaration for North Carolina to expedite federal support for emergency protective measures, and a contingent of FEMA Incident Management Team personnel are on the ground in the state today. We thank our federal partners for their support to the state during both our response and recovery operations from Debby. For power outage, current weather, or evacuation route information, please visit readync.gov. Additionally, residents can access the state's nearly 600 flood gauges through the North Carolina Flood Inundation Mapping and Alert Network by going to fiman.nc.gov. Finally, please call 911 only for emergencies. We wish to keep emergency lines open for those with life-threatening situations. As we begin to see impacts here in North Carolina, please remain alert, informed, and check on those in your community who may need assistance. Together, taking care of our families, our neighbors, and our communities, we are stronger during a disaster. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Ray. I'd like anybody, media here, who would like to ask a question to approach the microphones on each side. We also have some media, I think, online, but we'll have questions from people in the room first, and any of us are available to answer questions. So, Laura?
It's Laura Leslie with WRAL News. How many of the search and rescue teams, the water rescue teams, are on standby, and where are those teams located?
I think there's 17 of them, but I think they're going to be deployed mostly in eastern North Carolina. I'll let Director Ray. respond to that.
Thanks, Laura. Yes, sir. They are, the large majority of our teams are located either forward deployed into counties that may be planning for significant flooding or staged at a regional location. Same with the teams in our central branch. Right now, with the rainfall that we're seeing, again, I would also remind folks that we are seeing this is going to be a statewide impact. So very much there are western parts of the state that are also looking at and evaluating some of these flooding threats. Right now, the bulk of those 17 teams are staged either forward in counties or at staging locations in the east. Same for our central branch.
And just a follow-up question, you also mentioned some commodity distribution. You mentioned 9 counties. Which counties are those?
I will get those to you. Again, predominantly towards that southeastern corner, also kind of, I think, down over towards into the Sandhills as well. But really, those counties, I think, looking at potential rainfall and flood levels, want to make sure that they're prepared as well.
Thanks.
Once the storm has passed, you talk about several days of impacts. Are there particular rivers you're concerned about, or particular parts of the state that you're concerned will continue to see impacts into the weekend and after the storm has moved out of here?
One of the things that we have learned from flooding in North Carolina over the years is that we need to be better prepared to be able to predict where problems will occur. The FIMAN system, FIMAN, you can go online and see the prediction of river cresting. It comes in measurements of 48 hours ahead of time. So we've learned a lot more about what to expect. And already you can go online and look at the rivers. We aren't at the situation yet where we expect the rivers to be at Florence and Matthew stage. There are some that are a little closer at this point, but we really don't know for sure yet because we expect those rivers to crest starting Friday, Saturday, and maybe even some into Sunday. And you guys tell me if I think I've got that right. So we've installed more gauges, and having that system in place gives us a much better idea of where the damage might be. It helps us with evacuation orders. It helps us where to concentrate our resources.
And can you talk about what work is being done with FEMA now in the event that this rises to the level that we see people forced out of their homes, things like that? What's being done now, especially in light of what's happened in recent years with trying to get people back into their homes after these events?
Done right now to get ready?
Is being done ahead of time with FEMA to prepare in the event that,
Yeah, I'm gonna let Will
people
take
are
that
forced
question.
out?
So thank you for that question. I think as you see up here, and as we have talked about before, I think the partnership early in an event is what's going to be critical, whether we're talking about with our local jurisdictions, our state agencies, or our federal partners to include FEMA. Right now, that pre-landfall declaration is focused on supporting emergency protective measures specifically related to mass care, so sheltering and evacuation, as well as direct federal assistance, so allowing us to get federal resources in as a part of that pre-landfall declaration. Having their incident management team here has allowed us both to, I think, better collaborate and coordinate on ongoing response actions, to be able to forecast and predict a little bit better what potential additional federal support may be needed, and to compress that timeline to be able to work with FEMA on getting those additional resources if needed. We also have our team in recovery who is here at the State EOC that obviously works in a very different phase of the operation, and are already working with FEMA to look at potential locations if the forecast that we are seeing right now comes to fruition, and we see the impacts that we are at this point looking at, to be able to expedite support out to those individuals and those families and those communities that are potentially impacted.
Thanks a lot.
What communities are you monitoring closely that have previously been impacted by storms and are still trying to recover right now?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. Can you?
So what communities are you closely monitoring right now that have previously been impacted by storms that are still trying to recover right now?
Most of the counties in southeastern North Carolina, we're keeping a close eye on, wanting to make sure that we are ready with the resources if they need them.
And what efforts are happening right now to mitigate flooding on our roadways?
Joey?
Yes, one thing we've done all this week is we've had crews out in low-lying areas and known trouble spots, cleaning debris off of drop inlets and grates and handling those type of situations. In addition, as the storm's been coming in already this week, they're going around and where there's areas of high shoulder and trying to open that up to get any standing water off of the road.
So anything pre-positioned already? Like anything in place pre-positioned already?
Well, we have over 2,200 employees assigned to this storm all across the state, and we're ready to shift resources if necessary to more trouble areas. But we've got people in every county.
Director Ray, on the FEMA declaration, could you provide any more specifics about the emergency protective measures? I know there's the sheltering piece of it, but like emergency protective measure seems pretty vague and wide-ranging.
That is a federal term within the policy guidance. That's how we categorize the various response options and activities that we do. For pre-landfall, generally FEMA will constrain it to what we call emergency protective measures, which is actions to help either immediately protect life safety or to prepare to protect life safety in a community. As a part of this pre-landfall declaration, they have really narrowed it to making sure that the resources we are putting towards supporting mass care, so the areas that are really focused on people, are we supporting getting them out of the floodwaters or out of the potential impacted community, as well as supporting them from a housing standpoint, so sheltering. That's really where they have narrowed that focus. That does not mean that as we look at the longer term horizon of what we could see from this storm or other federal programs that could be turned on as a result of any impact, that is separate from the pre-landfall declaration. So this was really a step for us to be able to, I think, try to jumpstart and get ahead of some of the coordination and collaboration that needed to happen with our federal partners for the immediate response, and make sure that we've got the personnel already in the state to be able to pivot for longer term response or as we move into recovery.
And what would kind of the cadence be of going to another disaster declaration, like not a pre-landfall, but a more formal one?
So great question. I think what we're looking at right now is the focus of all the agencies here and all of our local jurisdictions is getting resources, equipment, people, teams in place to be able to deal with the immediate life safety needs that potentially come from this storm. As we see what the impacts are over the next several days, we will conduct damage assessments along with our local jurisdictions to determine what level of damage they have seen or are anticipating to see, both to public infrastructure as well as homes. That damage assessment data that we get along with our counties and then working to validate that with our partners at FEMA are what determines what additional federal programs either from FEMA or other federal agencies could get turned on. All of that is based on eligible damage assessment numbers as a direct result of the event. So those will be decisions that we will move through as we look at the storm impacts. But again, I think that's one thing. People think response right now, why would recovery be here? I think this is a perfect example of why we need recovery in on the front end. And so our perspective here is we start with recovery very much in mind. And so how can we make sure that our team, FEMA, and the counties are already thinking ahead, thinking about anticipating those needs to get damage numbers, to be able to provide the right information to FEMA to make determinations on what other programs federally could be turned on.
One last question, Laura Leslie with WRAL again. I think as a lot of us watch this storm and hear about how slowly it's moving and how much rain it's bringing, we're all thinking back to Florence. What did the state emergency management learn from Florence? What are we doing differently this time to prepare for this that maybe we didn't do or didn't know to do before Florence?
One of the things we've done is in the rebuilding from Matthew and Florence, we have worked to rebuild in a more resilient way. Many of the homes that have been repaired and replaced are now elevated and more resilient. We have had areas of our state that we've just simply decided not to rebuild in. And using those areas that created parks and other catch basins that can help absorb flood water and prevent other areas from being flooded. We hope that this event will not approach the catastrophic nature of both of those hurricanes, but it just shows us that we have to pay attention to resiliency, to building code standards. I think that also will help insurance rates for people if we build back better and stronger and choose not to build back in certain places. And I think we continue to hone the process of making sure that we save lives with our emergency response. The coordination is extraordinary, and the first responders are brave who go in and work to try to help people. And I think also with riverine flooding, having more knowledge about when these rivers will crest, seeing the damage that has been done in the past, getting these evacuation orders in place if they are needed. I think all of those have been lessons learned and hopefully will save lives and property in the future. Okay, do we have folks online? We do not. Okay, thank you very much. We will let you know when we'll come back and brief again.